Hello and welcome to the second class. Last week I introduced the series by talking about basic flipping. The conclusion was that it works, but it's incredibly basic. It really limits you and gets you stuck or annoyed at certain points, which is not fun for anyone. Now in this class I'll give you insight on active flipping. It is called active flipping because you're there. You're taking advantage of the market right now and making profit that way. You're not AFK. The principles of active flipping apply to almost any item in the game, but for now I'm not going to talk about higher wealth items yet. I'll talk about those later on in the series. They usually have larger margins, they're more valuable, and they have lower limits per 4 hours, so they're a bit different. So for now we're just going to assume that we are flipping items with a limit of at least 10 per 4 hours. Now active flipping is without a doubt the most important stage of learning to merchant. I cannot stress on this enough. It really is. You have to take your time for this part, and you shouldn't move on until you feel you're skilled at it and that you're ready for more. Now I'll explain about active flipping in general right now, and after that I'll later on in the video I'll talk about how Merge VIP should go about it, what kind of advantages they have, and how they should do it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and let's get started. Basic flipping and active flipping are very much alike. They use the same method I described in a previous video. If you need to rehearse it, then feel free to pause the video here, because I will not be going over it again. You should know it by now. The difference is that someone who is active flipping uses their brains and takes multiple factors into account. They also know, or they should know, how to deal with the problems I talked about in a previous class. So let me start by talking about those first. The first problem most people encounter is finding an item to flip. With over 3,300 items in a Grand Exchange, it's surprising how many people struggle with this one. In the last video I put up an example of a possible item to flip based off the Grand Exchange graph, which was a Rune Scimitar. I'll take the example again and explain a bit about the graph and how to handle it first. So when you go to merge.com, this is what you get to see. On the left hand you have the US stocks, which is for real life investing, and then on the right side you have the virtual market, which is related to Runescape. So we're going to go to the virtual market for now, and here at the top you can look up items in our Grand Exchange database. So here I'm going to look up the Rune Scimitar, and it automatically gives you suggestions on what to look up. So if I look for the word rune here, I get so many suggestions. And then we head over to the Rune Scimitar, and as you can see, it loads pretty fast. Here you have the limit of the item per 4 hours, always on the top right, or in the middle. In the middle here you have the change in that last day in price, and then here you can simply view the individual prices of every single day, and that is something you can't do on Runescape.com. Jagex doesn't give you the ability to do this. You can add averages to the graph on the right here, and at the bottom you can use the slider to view more data. You can also use those little buttons at the top left to view more, which is always important to do. Make sure you zoom out to see more data, as that can be pretty useful. Now at the bottom here you have the indicators. If you click on the little question mark you get an explanation about how they work. I will not go into detail about it in the video here. It is important to always check the graph, like I said, but what makes Rune Scimitars a good item based off the graph? Well, as you can see here, it has a floor price of pretty much about 15.1k, and it keeps returning to that. And it also has a roof price of about 15.3k, I believe, and it keeps returning to that as well. Now it fluctuates a lot with very fluent lines in between those 2 points, which means there is enough volume, it is being traded a lot, and thus it'll make for fast and pretty safe flips. You can see one crash on the graph over there, but that's probably because of the evolution of combat. And other than that, it seems like a fairly good item based off the graph. Of course, the limit price is fairly low with 100 times 15k. It's not that great for people with more wealth, but who knows, it's worth looking into for people who have less money to use. So when picking an item to flip, look out for a graph with fluent lines that fluctuates a lot, like the blue one I randomly drew here. You'll note that there will be enough volume and enough of the item being traded, which is really important, especially when you get started with flipping. What you generally don't want is a very stable graph with step changes here and there, like the red one I randomly drew, because then your flips are probably going to be slower and it will be much more difficult to properly flip the item. You also have to make sure you can put enough money into it, so look at the limit and the price and multiply them to calculate the limit price, and that way you'll see how much you can invest into it per 4 hours. Now before going on, there are some exceptions to item limits. I have the ones I know of in the video here, so feel free to pause it if you want to read them. Now I can imagine you thinking, do I really have to sit here all day searching for random items and finding their graphs to see if they're any good to flip? I mean, you could, but I suggest you do things a little differently, or you're going to be fed up with graphs in no time. First of all, I suggest you to make 2 lists. One list is one many people will have, for your favorite flipping items. You can also add their general margins or flipping speed for yourself, though these vary a lot and may not always be worth adding. Now this list does take a while to set up, but after that it will only change every once in a while. Now while you're looking for an item to flip, you can pretty much run through the list and check which items have good margins right now, and there will almost always be several which are good. Now if there really aren't any good items on your list, then just take the time to experiment by looking for random items in a Gun Exchange and trying them out. Now you just keep their Gun Exchange graph in mind, and for the rest the same stuff applies. And then the second list I suggest you to make is for the do's and don'ts. Now this list is constantly updated throughout the month, as it is related to updates made in Runescape. Now I'm not talking about investing here yet, though I know this is where the idea is sort of born, but I'm talking about keeping in mind which items to stay away from when flipping, and which ones will probably be very good and will make you some great money. Now, for example, when Jagex announces that they will add a new high-level food into the game in an update this month, you note down to stay away from flipping food in general, as it is likely to crash and have less demand. Only experienced merchants should attempt to flip or short-term invest these items at that time, and I'll talk more about that later on in the series. Now on the other hand, when a boss update will be released, you might want to focus on flipping the supplies to kill it, like summoning pouches, potions, and weapons and such, because these are likely to have larger margins and faster flipping speed because of high demand. And these are the kind of things that end up on the do's part of your list. Now it's important to have this list to prevent yourself from losing a lot of money. Simply read about the update and think about what items it involves. And then you can decide if these items get a positive or a negative influence from this update, and you just note it down. And I know it sounds a bit annoying to do, but it will definitely prevent you from large losses here and there, and it already helps you slightly on your way towards investing too. Plus, it doesn't even take that much time. Now the reason why we're not moving on to investing at all here yet is simply because at this point you're probably not knowledgeable enough to do it yet, or you will pretty much always make more money with flipping so far if you don't have more wealth yet. So now you know how to pick a flipping item, how to find their limit and limit price per 4 hours, and you also know how to find the buy and sell prices. But still, a lot of people get impatient here. Their items don't buy or not fast enough according to them, and they rage. Now you may have just checked the prices of your item, but it's very possible that several other people did too, and now put in buy offers higher than you or sell offers lower than you. Let me show you guys an example of that with the Fury graph. Now I'm using the live graph of the Amulet of Fury here, and yeah, I zoomed in on it quite a bit to show a few price checks to explain this thing. So here you can see that the margins are pretty low, and the red line is the low price, the blue line is the high price. Now let's say you price check the item at this point here, with Furies having about a 42k margin. That's a pretty nice margin, and it would invite you to flip it. So let's say you put in your price at the low price, your buy price, at the low price here. And then a few minutes later someone else price checked and they overcut you, so they put in a buy price a few K higher. Now that means you won't be getting any stock. During this whole period further on, the price does not drop here, judging from those price checks. So you won't be getting any stock, and without the live graphs you'll have no clue what's going on. Now this overcutter here, who put it in a little bit higher, will be getting the stock, but then as you can see here someone else price checks as well, and they put it in a bit higher, about 300 GP. And that means that the first person who overcut you won't get anything either until they finish buying, which is the case in the price check after that. But then again, during this whole period, you are not getting anything. And in the meantime, the price is rising, people are flipping and selling, and you just have no idea what's going on. And this is really frustrating for a lot of people. Now, the same thing applies to the sell price. As you can see here, someone's trying to sell, but another person is constantly undercutting them and going below their price. And this is also really annoying. Keep in mind that with merchanting, you have a lot of competition from other players, and you cannot see them without the live graphs. So yes, it may often be the case that it takes you a long time to buy an item or to sell an item, or that you'll have to flip it for very small margins, which don't give you much profit. All this is because of overcutting and undercutting. A lot of people consider these two things the most annoying things about merchanting, but there are some ways to deal with it, where you not only make better profit, but you also kick the other person's ass. It's a method I figured out myself, and I'll explain about it in the next class, among some other things. Now this is all the advice I can give you on active flipping without being a merch VIP. Now let's see what you can do when you do have access to our live graphs, and I'll explain about our VIP giveaway as well. For anyone who doesn't have access yet or who wants to see what it is like, you can get yourself a free trial over here after registering an account. Now let me just log in real quick. So after you activated your trial, you get to this page here, and here you have a bit of explanation about how to use the live graphs, how it works. And if we go to the live prices tab, the first thing you see are those little links at the top here. We're going to ignore them for now, as I'll explain about them later on in the series. Now below it you can see a table of currently about, I believe 60 to 70 live items, which are tracked 24/7 with updated prices every few minutes. Now this makes flipping these items a lot safer and much easier, and it also helps a lot with short-term investing and investing in general. But the biggest advantage of live graphs is having data available to you 24/7, so you can pretty much analyze your merchanting at an unequaled level. For flipping, the main advantage is being able to see your competitors, which allows you to see exactly when people are messing with your prices, like I explained in the under and overcutting part earlier. Now if you plan to flip, then I suggest you to sort by percentage margin, as a higher percentage gives you a better return on investment. And at this point you have to consider the limit price in the column next to that as well, because let's say you have 200 mil to flip with, you don't want to flip an item with a limit price of like 530k like Snapdragons here, Snapdragon Seeds for example. And then last but not least, you have to check the last update. Normally seen they update every few minutes, but sometimes it is possible that an item goes down, like the Black Dragon Leather is a bit buggy over here, so we're going to have to fix that. But yeah, all the other items are updated every few minutes. And yeah, then it's just a matter of looking around and picking a bunch of items to look at. Now, what I suggest you to do is holding the control button, or if you're a Mac user, use the command button, and then click on a graph, and then you'll open multiple tabs in your browser, and you can easily switch between them. So for now I'm going to check the Prayer Renewal Flask, Raw Rocktails, Adamant Bars, and let's see, Royal Dragon Leather, and then just open up all of them at the top and you can easily swap between them. Now if I look at the Prayer Renewal Flask here, again I can drag the slider. You have the last update at the top right. If you move your mouse over the graph, you can see when the prices were at those prices, with a low and a high price, the averages of course, and the slider for more data. And then you have this little button here, which is the 4-hour limit button. If you click this, then in the live list your item will get marked as you having reached your limit, and then after 4 hours it will automatically unmark. Let's see. So after clicking the box you get this message here that it is ticked, and when you go back to the live prices, and I'm just going to refresh the page here, yeah, you'll see it's marked here, and it will unmark in 4 hours time. Now just look around really, just go over the different graphs you were looking at, look through the list again, make sure to refresh it often enough, and you can view more data, always important to do, especially for short-term investing, but again I'll get into that later. And yeah, just experiment and try out different graphs, try out different items, and you'll learn how to use them pretty quickly. Now just like in a previous class, I'd like to answer some frequently asked questions in this video again. People often ask what to do when they were trying to flip an item, they bought some stock and then it crashed on them. Now, this really depends on the item and a lot of different factors again, but I can still give you some tips in general that will hopefully help you a bit. So if you didn't have the do's and don'ts list yet that I suggested earlier, then now is the time to check the Runescape homepage to make sure there are no updates related to your item that could make it crash badly. The problem is, though, that the news is not always on a homepage. It can be in videos, on forum posts, or random JMod comments. And if it does crash because of an update, then in most of the cases, selling your item and taking the loss is your best option, as it is likely to crash very deep. Now, luckily, this is rarely the reason. Usually the reason is natural fluctuation or just someone dumping a large amount of stock. And in most of the cases, your item will recover, like in the example I showed, and you'll be able to sell it at either your buy price or the price you intended to sell it in the first place. And that usually happens a while later, and a while is something like half an hour up to a day after buying. If it still hasn't sold a day after buying, then you really have to look into it again. Now make sure you study the graph properly, because this is where the live graphs really help a lot. And as you can always see, the lowest point an item drops to, or where it has dropped to recently, and how well it did on recovering from that. And this is all the advice I can give about it in general. If you want more information on specific items, then feel free to drop by on our forums or the RC channel merch, where we'll help you out with your individual cases if you want any help on those. Now, another question that is often asked is what margins you should generally expect on a specific item to make it good. Now, first of all, I'm not very fond of expecting a certain margin, because if you do that, then you rarely push yourself to be better, and you're just getting by with a minimum or some kind of average profit. Secondly, the time of the day is essential here. I'll go in depth about this, about the importance of this later on in the series, because it really matters so much. And not only the time of the day, but also of the month, of the week, whatever. There are so many different factors, it's really hard to answer this, and that's what often happens in merchanting. There are so many factors at play that there isn't always a very clear answer to everything. Now, the best thing to do again here is testing out items and working from there, because then you have reference points to your profit margins, and try to push yourself sometimes by getting bigger margins, and you'll start noticing some boundaries here and there, but it does help you to improve. One thing that you can keep in mind, but it's not always true, is that usually the larger margin you're trying to flip for, the longer the flip will take. But again, this is not always true, so don't take it for granted. Now, at last I have one final tip. Always double check what you're doing. Seriously. When putting in a buy or sell offer, double check what you do, or even when price checking an item. Trust me when I say that literally every merchant makes this costly mistake sometimes, where they want to sell one of their stock or something to test the price, and then they accidentally instantly sell everything, and they just screw over their entire investment. You really don't want to be that person, but it happens to almost everyone, so double check what you do. And really, there are many variations to this, but just don't be stupid. Don't make that mistake. Now, then finally, I'd like to talk about something that some of you have been looking forward to in this video, which is our VIP giveaway. So yeah, we're giving away 1 month free merch VIP to our subscribers. So if you subscribe, you're automatically entered into this draw. Anyone who is already subscribed is too, and you'll also be in any future draws for our future giveaways as well. Of course, other than subscribing, anything like liking, favoriting, or sharing it with your friends will help us a lot as well, so that would be much appreciated too. The winner will be announced on the 22nd February, which is exactly 2 weeks after posting this video. You will be contacted through YouTube, and we will put the winner up in the description of this video. Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed the second class. I think it should help new merchants on their way to making money, and hopefully it taught some of the more experienced flippers some new stuff here and there too. Let me know in the comments what you thought about it. And next Friday is the third class, and I'll be explaining about dealing with overcutters and undercutters. This will be the first Merch VIP only class, as among other things I will be revealing an effective method that I figured out myself, which works best with access to the live graphs. And thank you for watching, and take care guys.